Good morning, sir.
मॉर्निंग राव साहब कैसे हैं?
Start. Nikhil,
Yes, sir.
you can start.
Okay, sir. Good morning and warm welcome for all the inaugural session of Faculty Development Program on Management of Intellectual Property and Innovation. I, Nikhil, on behalf of National Institute of Industry and Engineering, Mumbai, would like to thank all the dignitaries, officials, the participants, the faculties, and all the attendees for gracing the occasion. Today, we have with us the chief guest, Dr. Manisha Sridhar, Regional Advisor, World Health Organization WHO, Southeast Asia Region, CRO, India. The guest of honor, Dr. G.R. Raghavendra, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Law and Justice, Government of India. Professor Manoj Tiwari, Director, NITI, Mumbai. Professor B. Koteshwar Rao Naik, Program Coordinator, NITI, Mumbai. Now, I would like to invite Professor Manoj Tiwari, Director, NITI, for the welcome address. Sir, over to you.
First of all, at NITI digital platform, I extend my warm welcome to Yam Siddharji for coming to us and giving the advice and suggestions to the participant about the faculty development program launched by the AICT, and NITI is one of the bidder for organizing this particular course. And I also offer the hearty welcome to all the participants who are coming to attend this program. And I am sure with the resources which we have arranged, you will be very happy to learn the things for which this particular faculty development program is planned. I can say that the scheme adopted by the ICT so novel that many of the institutions where there were hardly any arrangement for giving updated training and information and knowledge to the faculty members, but in this form of the well-organized methods, there is a ample scope and need to bridge the latest technology, knowledge and details to the teachers and faculty members, so that whatever gap is there among them, they can easily upgrade it and they can easily bridge it. Now, I want to just say that please take the full opportunity of being here and listen to the eminent people who are coming to take your classes and ask your queries and clear your doubts, so that you will be very fruitfully utilizing your period for attending this course. So once again, I offer my hearty welcome to PM Siddharji for coming to our platform. And Professor Raoji, thanks a lot for taking initiative and arranging this course. And Nikhil, well done by associating with this program and anchoring the whole thing. So with this note, now I say over to the Professor Raoji for next session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Nikhil.
Yes, thank you very much, sir, for enlightening the gathering. I feel privileged to introduce the guest of honor, Dr. G.R. Raghavendra. Dr. G.R. Raghavendra is a civil servant from Central Secretariat Service, CSS, 1988. At present, he is a Joint Secretary, Department of Justice, Ministry of Law and Justice since January 2017. He is a Mission Director for National Mission of Law and Justice Delivery and Legal Reform. He is driving policy reform for improving enforcing contracts parameter under the ease of doing and e-code projects. Earlier, he was Joint Secretary in Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. He is a former Registrar of Copyright of Indian Copyright Office. He played a key role in introduction of recent amendment to the Copyright Act in 2012 and Copyright Rule 2013. Due to some urgent meeting of ministry, Dr. G. Raghavendra would not be joining in our inauguration session, but he will be present in our today's third session at 3:15 p.m. Uh, so we'll move further. Now I would like to introduce our chief guest, Dr. Manisha Sridhar. Dr. Manisha Sridhar, World Health Organization (WHO), Southeast Asia region (CRO) works on intellectual property rights, regulation, trade for health and medical products that include trade, legal issues relating to public health. Dr. Sridhar received her master's degree in intellectual property law with specialization in patent and biotechnology law and in a certified international mediator for IPR dispute from Franklin Percy Law Center, Concord, USA. She has an MSc Public Health degree from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and is one of the very few person who has specialization on patent and biotechnology law along with public health. As a member of Indian in the administrative service, Dr. Sridhar worked in different capacities in Government of India. She was Principal Secretary in the State Government of Himachal Pradesh, where she managed Department of Health, Animal Husbandry, Fisheries, Corporation, Town and Country Planning, Housing and Urban Development, Agriculture and Horticulture from time to time. Dr. Sridhar has written extensively and prepared case studies, study materials from courses. She has scripted and produced a film on IPR for World Intellectual Property Organization (WIPO). She assisted United Nations Industrial Development Organization as on a geographical indication for traditional product. I request Dr. Manisha Sridhar ma'am for enlightening the gathering.
Thank you for this kind introduction. And Professor Tiwari, Rao Naik, and all the participants. I first of all want to thank the Institute for inviting me to be present with you today. And I also thank Rao Naik for making adjustments on certain time, as I think because of virtual meetings, we are all multitasking in many ways. I see that we have a very informed audience. And the audience is already well aware of many of the issues which relate to intellectual property. So I was wondering that how I could add value to my 10 minutes today so that it helps us in moving forward.
Nadu, you can take 15 minutes. 15
No,
to
that's
20
kind of, thank you. But more importantly, it's very important when we talk about intellectual property that we add value. And because that is the crux of when we are all intellectual property, in the domain of intellectual property, all of us. It's if we don't add value, then we are not serving the interests of moving forward. And that is what intellectual property is meant to do. So I would like to, first of all, there are 4 points I will make before you. And the first is that traditionally, when we look at intellectual property, we talk about the rationale for stimulating creativity and innovativeness. And that has been the principle of. As we have moved along, and you know that the first intellectual property law was, in fact, the law came later than the first patent, which was taken in 1460. But more important, that was in Venice, and most of you would be knowing it because you are all in the domain of intellectual property. But more importantly, what I do wish to state is that since then, while it has been a stimulus for creativity and inventiveness, over a period of time, intellectual property developments have responded to the changing circumstances. So we now look at protection and encouragement of investments, which is extremely important. But when I look at the COVID-19 situation, and particularly the situation with respect to the introduction of vaccines, I find that intellectual property and patents are actually a passport for venture capital and venture capital financing. You've heard of the Pfizer vaccines and the two young Turkish immigrant researchers to Germany who founded their own company, and then in January 2020 last year, they realized that the COVID is coming and they need to get the vaccine, and they teamed up with Pfizer. Similarly, when we look at the AstraZeneca vaccine, the lady the professor in Oxford University, Sarah Gilbert, they actually already had spinned off a company called Vasitech. And then this Vasitech teamed up, because it's a small company, it doesn't have the wherewithal to spread vaccines in a global manner in so many countries. So they teamed up with AstraZeneca, which is a multinational, to distribute the vaccine and to work further on them. Just suffice to say that no longer it is just a creativity and innovation instrument. The intellectual property, and as you know, there are lots of intellectual properties. There are, when introducing Raghavendra, you heard about copyright. So copyright, patents, geographical indication, trade secrets, industrial design. So there are lots of different intellectual properties, but each one of them is now more and more being used as a venture capital financing mechanism. And I find that increasing in public health, and particularly in the medical devices arena. So this is one thing I thought I would flag to you. And when we look at communicating for intellectual property and also encouraging young scientists and researchers, as intellectual property is, gives the greatest impetus for that kind of creativity, I think we need to stress this aspect that when there is an intellectual property, we talk about protection, but we also need to move beyond that and to look at financing and generating greater wealth for the populations and spread the greater dissemination of the intellectual property through that means. The second point I thought I will share with you is that as we see the aspects moving along, in these different technology areas, at least in the science of medicine and medical devices, we have the platform technologies which are very important when they are actually patented. And the impact of platform technologies, as you know, platform technology is the original technology based on which we need to piggyback when further technology is developed. It is a systems setting technology. So in those areas where there is patent protection, it has great impact, not only on the technology and innovation, but also on regulation. Because when a product is regulated, the first mover actually sets the standards for regulation. So in this aspect, I think we need to bear in mind that intellectual property rights, and particularly patents. And let me tell you, trademarks are also playing a very big role. In fact, in the vaccine dissemination, you will be amazed at the kind of discussions that we have had on the kind of labeling requirements that are there, and the barcoding, and can we have the RFID, and how these different technologies will interface, and particularly in certain jurisdictions where there may not be that much information on understanding the labeling well. So how to communicate that with the local population, and particularly the person who's going to actually disseminate the vaccine and put the vaccine jab into the population. So the second part, which I thought I would bring to your notices, is that while we look at intellectual property and patents, and not only patents, trademark, and others, it has a great interface and connect with regulation. And we need to bear that in mind. And very often, in some of our work with BIS and also with the CDSCO, which is the drug regulator, and as you know, BIS is a standard setting authority, we find that the regulation is always 2 or 3 steps behind the technology, and we are in a catching up phase. And the faster we do it, the better we are able to engage with our researchers and assist them to bring their technologies up to speed and onto the market. So this is the second thing I thought that it could be of some interest to you, particularly in the context of all the work that you would be doing as a faculty. And my third point, which I thought I would like to state, is that we need to bear in mind that increasingly big data is playing a very big role, and the bigger companies are playing a very big role. So when I'm tracking the intellectual property rights and patents connect in the health sphere, I find that a lot of, for example, the clinical trials work is being now led by these major companies who have huge data and cloud space. And also, our technologies are interfacing both the data and the basic technology of engineering. So for example, you have mechatronics. So you have the electronic components, which is embedding the mechanical component. And similarly, you can have so many examples. And as a result, the technology is becoming very complex, and we need to work when we look at development programs. We need to work across different streams to be able to do that. And we know very well that, innovation doesn't come from the people who are engaged in a particular activity. For example, the bougies, as they say in French, the candle makers, they didn't discover electricity. It was Thomas Edison who did it. So innovation, and when we look at development of technology, it usually takes place outside the domain for which the technologies work. And for that, your approach as a faculty in terms of assisting the researchers to bring new ideas and to work across different streams and then follow the law and the regulation, as I have mentioned earlier, would become very critical and extremely important. In fact, when I was looking at your at the flyer that Rao Naik has sent me, I was a bit intrigued. We have management of intellectual property and innovation, and then you have mentioned creation, protection, and leveraging of IP. And this is important, but innovation would come before we are managing the IP, and we need to probably bring that connect more closely when we are communicating, as you will in the next few days before you. The final point, which I thought which would be of interest to you, is that very often when we look at intellectual property and we look at our acts and rules, they were a response to the trade-related intellectual property rights, which is the TRIPS agreement of WTO. And this was negotiated from the year 1988 during the Uruguay round of negotiation. And it culminated in the WTO in 1995. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is we need to understand that a lot of time has passed between 95 and when it was negotiated in the Uruguay round in the late 80s. To where we are today in 2021. And the reason we need to know it is that the law's interpretation, judicial constructs, and different new technologies, for example, the BPCA, the whole debate on biologicals and biosimilars, and to what extent they can be they can adopt the Hatch-Waxman Act permutations under the generics is a huge debate now, and things have changed in terms of appreciation of the technologies as well. So while in an emergency situation, as we have seen that there is government use provision in the US, which is actually not part of the patent law, that's a different law. And similarly, other constructs that are there, they are all responding to the situations which have arisen due to these new developments. And as faculty members and people who are engaged in intellectual property, I think it is worthwhile that we not only keep track of developments as they are taking place, but we need to move beyond that. We need to see where exactly is technology going in the future and how we can, because if we don't do that, what is happening is countries like India are always in a catching up phase rather than setting the norms and standards for the next science and regulation and IP constructs that are coming up. And so for this reason, it is important that we keep track and keep abreast of some of these developments. And more importantly than that, we also need to be able to look at a think tank kind of an approach so that we are clear how exactly we can contribute to these long-term developments. Because if we are able to be part of that ecosystem, then our researchers and our people who are engaged in all the different levels of intellectual property will find it worthwhile and be able to be much ahead of these processes. And finally, I think we need to keep in mind, as I had said in the beginning, that we need to add value in intellectual property. I look at some of the excellent work that has been done in some of these areas in our country, and particularly I remember for geographical indications, we have so many geographical indications for very special and specific products in our country. But unless it takes the next step, and which is part of your title here, the management of intellectual property, how can that society and that community leverage on the intellectual property that they have generated and use it to be able to generate wealth for themselves and for the community and for everyone. And also for the general well-being of the place and with all the considerations that we now see on environment and so many other issues, I think this is very important. And for this reason, the intellectual property provisions can really contribute in terms of moving forward. So with these words, I thank you and the Institute for giving me this opportunity to make this presentation. I will hold on for a few seconds or minutes if there is any question that you would like me to ask. Over to you, Rao Naik.
Thank you, madam. So anyone can ask any questions we have. Sir? Director, sir?
Yeah, I do have one question. This is Dr. Bhaskar Gupta.
Yeah, Bhaskar.
Yeah, I do have one question, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Ma'am, I would like to ask one question. You told to add value to the intellectual property. Could you please give us one example of adding value to intellectual property so that we will come to know?
I will give you, thank you for the question. And it's a pertinent question that is critical. In fact, this is what we need to do with the intellectual property. I thought I will elaborate on the example that I gave you for the AstraZeneca. I told you that when in fact, you know that we have this Covishield vaccine. The Covishield vaccine was developed by this lady called Sarah Gilbert, who is the Oxford professor in vaccine. And when she and I think it is, Edward Jenner is credited by establishing finding out the smallpox vaccine. So the institute in Oxford is called the Jenner Institute. And Adrian Hill is currently the head of that. So the director and Sarah, they realized that this is a good vaccine technology. Now to add value to it, what you said, they patented it. And they founded a company called Vasitech. Now, this was a company that is created with Oxford support, and Oxford University also has a share in this company. And then later on, when this company developed, do you know which are the other partners in Vasitech? You have the Googles and others, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, all of them are shareholders of this company. So when we look at a new technology that is developed, this is how, when there is a patent and you spin off companies. In fact, I remember in the context of the CRISPR technology, which I don't know many of you, if you are following, this is the first time the Nobel Prize has been given in chemistry to two young women. And one of them is French and works in a German institute, Emmanuel, and the other one is a US lady. And they said that it's the easiest thing in the US is to spin off a new company. And why they spin off a company is that when there is a patent, then you know that there is value in the patent. When there is a company and venture capital, you present it then to the venture capitalists so that they can see value in it. Otherwise, the patent is only going to sit in the patent books of the patent office. It cannot generate wealth unless it springs up when it is known. Then, of course, but when we see that in the context of health, then we have other parameters which are very critical because it is access. So when you are looking at what are the prices of medicines, how we can, once these companies are formed, how to promote a larger publichood, then good. Then there are other aspects which come into being, and it is a rather very big debate, which is not part of this exercise and for which maybe I need to speak to you again on a separate session. But just to put it briefly, once there is a patent, rather than taking a patent which is, and let me tell you, most of you researchers are doing excellent job, but we have only been concentrating on publication because that has been the traditional way of working for our university professors. And some of their very excellent ideas, they remain as a publication rather than convert into a financing measure through attracting finance and going out as a new product into the public. So it's a question of approach, and we need to look at it in a different way when we look at exploiting intellectual property. And let me say exploiting in a positive sense rather than in a negative one. I don't know whether I've been able to clear and explain exactly what I meant. Over to you.
You answered my question very well, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nikhil.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for enlightening the audience with your experience and wisdom, ma'am. I'm sure that the participant immensely benefited from the today's session. Now I would like to invite our own Professor B. Koteshwar Rao sir to brief about the program schedule and vote of thanks. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Nikhil. I feel privileged to host this faculty development program sponsored by AICT under Atal Mission. So we have a well-versed and experienced person who has almost more than 2 decades of experience in intellectual property. So she's in front of us and she already explained from the genesis of IP, from Virage down to WTO to TRIPS, then giving the backdrop of COVID and then the vaccine developed by the Oxford team with AstraZeneca. So I thank Madam very much for your enlightening session, and we hope to have more session in future. So we'll inviting you special, in another session, maybe in maybe a month or so. So in this week-long program, we'll be covering all the topics from creation of intellectual property to the basic from creation of intellectual property to the forms of intellectual property, how we protect the patent, trademark, trade secrets, geographical indications, copyrights, and farmers and breeders' rights. So then we will be also covering the commercialization of intellectual property, licensing, then strategies followed in drafting the patents, and on the international, the global market, how we will have a competitive edge once we'll have the patent. So we have eminent speakers from the academia and industry. So to name the experts for the week-long session. So I have already shared with you the program schedule. So we have a Dr. Raghavendra ji who could not attend this inauguration session because of the emergency meeting at the ministry. So you will be taking session in the afternoon on the industrial design, GI, protection of plant varieties, and Farmers' Rights Act. And then we have Dr. BK Sahu from NRDC, who heads the NRDC office in the the East Zone of Vishakhapatnam. So we will be talking about the treaties and convention of intellectual property. Then we have Miss Anuradha Maheshwari, who is an academician come a legal person who works on patent drafting. She is having a firm called Luxmantis, so she will be giving us feed on the techno-legal language how we use in drafting the patents. Then we will be having another session on IP analytics, so how to find out the white space in the intellectual property domain, because there will be many people who will be working on the same kind of research, same kind of topics, to avoid reinventing the wheel. So patent database is the place where you can identify what are the patents already been filed and what is the white space we have. So Dr. Ginesh from Relicura Technologies will be giving us how to identify the white space. Then we have part of AACT, this program, they insisted us to have a session on managing oneself from the pandemic. So we have a psychologist, Professor Jansi Priya from Meston College of Education, Chennai. She will be talking on mental health, coping with stress and all. Then we have Professor Gauri Garget from IIT Kharagpur will be talking about the intellectual property in the support from the national international organization protection of IP. Then we have Dr. Yaswan Dev Panwar from TIFAC will be talking about the competitive advantage of IP in the global market, who is already an expert in running a lot of programs for the women scientists under the title of intellectual property for women scientists. Then we have a Professor Sudhir Kumar Jain, ex professor and HOD of Management Studies at IIT Delhi, who is pioneer in intellectual property education, who started in the early 90s to teach IP in all the premier institutions across the country. So will be giving us more about the IP valuation, how you create value, how you derive value from the intellectual property. Then we have IP policy, and there are a lot of things we'll be covering in this week-long program. So I welcome all the participants, and I also thank my director, who was the motivational source for us to organize such kind of programs here in NITI, and our Dean SRIC office, Professor Khana Puri, and the director office staff and the officers, and the ACT officers, the chairman, Dr. Professor Anil Sahasrabudheji, and the Western Zone Office Officer Ajit Singh ji for their support for organizing this workshop. So I thank each and everyone, especially Manisha Sridhar Madam for taking her time out from busy schedule for spending time here for us and giving enough of background for the intellectual property and the happenings in intellectual property. I also thank my research scholar Nikhil for anchoring this session. So thank you everyone. Thank you very much. So all the participants, please log on to the session 1. We have sent the link. There is a separate link given to you. So you all can sign up from this particular portal, and then can sign in for this session. Thank you everyone. Thank you very much.
Hello, Dr. Koteshwara. Hello. Is anybody from the administrative side, organizer side? Hello. Is anybody from organizer side? Hello. Hello.